Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Airspeed's Korra Rewatch video. This one's going to be for K411 Kuvira's Gambit. And I think this is an okay episode. I don't think there's anything particularly amazing about this one. It's a setup episode for the finale, the last two episodes, and it does its job, but I don't think it stands out like massively on its own as an episode. Obviously it has like big moments in that it's Kuvira arriving at the city, it's the surrender of Republic City, the reveal of the Colossus, and a few other little things. The kind of cliffhanger is one of those kind of cliffhangers where like there's no way they're going to commit to like what that implies, that everyone's just been killed. That was never going to happen. And basing, I suppose, the drama of that scene basically around Kuvira willing to sacrifice Baatar is a little lacking because you don't know how to consider their relationship. And I think this is the basis of the issues with Kuvira from the get-go. How many times discussing this book up to now have I said, this is underdeveloped? Why doesn't this get across the emotion that the show is clearly trying to go for? And this is another case of, when this is happening, like, does she care for Baatar at all? The episode is like vague about it, where like, yes, but clearly her mission is what she cares about more. So immediately you go back to like, how did their relationship start? Was it actually out of them caring for each other, or was it just that she saw him as the inventor who could be part of her plans? And that is the mistake that they made in not showing that scene for some reason. Not going in depth enough on Kuvira and Baatar Jr. leaving Zaofu, and the impact that that has on the Beifong family, and the impact that it has on them themselves. It just takes away so much potential emotion from all of the scenes included here, to the point where Sue finally getting to talk to her son really doesn't have the impact that you expect it to have, because he's so devoted to Kuvira. And you get that. That's one thing they do get across well. Baatar very clearly loves Kuvira, and it's all he really cares about in this situation. He would put her ahead of anything to do with the Earth Empire. That's how much he cares. And it's obviously the reverse for Kuvira. But what did she latch onto with him? How did she choose him in a way back then? Because they're trying to present them as a couple, but you really don't know much about their dynamic as a couple as such. Because it feels like it's based around, we hate the Beifong family, let's leave together, and that's it. You don't know if they actually do care for each other, and I don't know why the writers didn't see that this would be a problem. And especially trying to make such a dramatic moment out of her betraying him, watching it again, it really doesn't have a lot of impact, because it's mainly Baatar and the betrayal that he feels that is the impact of the scene, rather than any sort of like decision from Kuvira. And maybe that's part of what they were going for, but at that point then it feels like they've gone overboard on Kuvira and how evil and just goal-minded she is, that for her to turn from the character that we met in book 3, go through some sort of like obsession with power arc and become this character, it just feels like it's too much, and not enough of it is explained. Her relationship with Sue, how much impact it had on the Beifong family, her relationship with Baatar, all of this stuff just feels undercooked going into the finale. The strength is obviously that Kuvira, just as a base character, is fine. It's just when you get to trying to discuss how she got here, that's where everything sort of falls apart a bit. But this episode, as I said, it has its moments. I think the strength of this episode is the crew going in to capture Baatar and the interrogation of Baatar. That, I think, is the overall like best scene in the episode, because you have Korra's approach. One, she knows that this is what has to be done. She gets a stealth team. She chooses the members. You see her really step up as a leader here. She's just like, Tenzin, Bumi, Kai, Jinora, you're my team. We're going to go in there and get this done. And they get it done. She has to kind of get Milo through the fact that he hasn't been picked, which she does effectively. and it's good. The only slight issue I have there is that, like, okay, cool, Janor's on the team, but Janor and Kai don't really do much in the plan. They don't talk to each other either. And that's been a problem over the course of the book, that they're meant to be a couple. Janor is meant to be a kind of focused character. Neither are getting attention. I like that Boomy got the chance to sort of shine here as being a sort of, in a way, part leader on this mission. That was cool. And then especially Korra, once they have him in the kind of warehouse, I like that her initial thing is just to go to violence, I'll beat you up, I'll injure you. That doesn't work very clearly. Then she latches on to the fact that, oh, this is how to do it. Take away what he cares about the most, which is Kuvira. And she does that by basically saying, we'll flee, we'll leave, we don't care if we'll lose anything. We'll devote ourselves forever to just keeping you away from Kuvira. We won't hurt you, we'll keep you alive, but you will suffer because you won't be with Kuvira. And it immediately turns him, and he immediately wants to abandon all of this stuff. So, in that sense, like, it's good for Korra, and it makes sense for Baatar, but I think a lot of the drama is taken out of the scene because Kuvira, it's one of those ones where I don't really know how much of a, like, emotional character we're meant to interpret Kuvira as. Because it almost feels like you can interpret this as she never cared about him. He was always just a pawn, and she was kind of keeping him on her side by kind of faking the relationship. But we don't really know that, and that's the vagueness of a lot of what's going on here. It's not especially clear. I think the episode attempts to at least present that, like, she's not exactly happy about having to do this, but if it has to be done, it has to be done, and that's that. As for other stuff in the episode, I think this is probably the only episode where Raiko is in any way kind of, like, reasonable, understandable, and you can sort of get behind him. He makes the right decisions here. He had to surrender. The amount of power that was coming at them, if he had even attempted to fight back, he's basically just sacrificing the people that she was pointing at immediately. He's immediately sentencing those people to death by even attempting to fight back. So he saves lives, so many lives, by making the decision that he does. And I don't think there's any way to really criticize him for, like, immediately surrendering, because he immediately kind of neutralizes the situation. There's still a debate to happen. There's time for at least the hero characters to escape and come up with a solo plan, but he has to do his thing now in the debate. And especially when Baatar is captured, and then suddenly he and Lane are like, wow, the Earth Empire isn't being professional, and, like, they're the ones surrendering, and they're the ones being like, come on, be professional as you take us over. So that was a fun little moment to just kind of, I suppose, give Raiko a moment where he looks more professional than the Earth Empire does. But, that we really quickly get past that, because that's when the call comes in from Korra and Baatar, and that big emotional scene happens. And, as I said, the cliffhanger ultimately doesn't mean a lot, because it's immediately, like, reversed. There's no real injuries as such. Like, I think Baatar is the one who gets injured the most, because he was tied up when it happened. Everyone else just, like, cuts and bruises. They're still more or less 100% going into the final battle. The bigger thing, though, is the betrayal that Baatar feels, and where does he go as a character. And it's another case of they at least leave it open with Baatar, where they may not be ever able to forgive him, but they can see now that, like, he's been betrayed. He was invested because of Kuvira, in a way manipulated by her. The family can sort of forgive that in a way if he's willing to. But beyond saying that, they don't go into it enough, I don't think. And we'll get to the stuff with Sue and how she feels about Kuvira at the end, and how that just feels weird given what's been presented. But so far, this is fine. I think they just sort of forget about the whole, like, Baatar Senior kind of plot, because I would have liked to have, like, emphasized that a bit more here, because you get, like, Varric, I think, in this episode saying, like, oh, he actually is a pretty good inventor when he sees the Colossus, and it is Baatar's kind of masterpiece that he has helped to like construct this thing. And speaking of which, the Colossus as the reveal, it's interesting. Like, I don't think there's any way to be like, oh, this is like amazing. What an amazing thing to be the final villain. And it's just a big robot, and we've had a bit too many like machines versus Bender fights, whereas I think so many people would have been much more happy if the finale was more Bender on Bender fights and less Benders against big machines and stuff like that. It feels like we just kind of missed out on some of those kind of moments over the course of Korra, of too much of it was characters fighting against machines or stuff like that, and not enough one-on-one bending fights. I think it's fine in that it ends up giving us like an opportunity for the Benders to go all out, 100%, full power against this thing. No need to hold back. They just have to try and destroy this thing any way they can. And it seems basically invulnerable because it's made out of the domes of Zaofu. It's not able to be like metal bent. It's invulnerable, as we'll see, to the electromagnetic pulse thing. Is there any way to defeat this? Like that's the question. It's a real challenge, and that's definitely what's got across, that the Spirit Vine weapon is just this kind of undefeatable weapon, and that's a really good setup. The idea of anything blocking that, anything being able to stop the Spirit Vine weapon outside of just destroying the mechanisms that operate it, feels like impossible at this point. And that's what makes the finale and that moment for Korra so impactful, but we'll get to that. Anything else with this one? You get Julie and Varric reuniting, of course. And Julie, I suppose, really stepping into the spotlight a little bit here, of just Varric being happy that she's back, but wanting things to go back to immediately the way things were, of just like, oh, you're back, you don't actually hate me, assistant. And she's like, no, what I said about you I didn't really mean, but I want the dynamic of this relationship, whatever this is, to be different now. We have to be equals in this. And he, obviously says the wrong thing, causes her to storm out, but she's completely right. Varric does need to change, in that there has to be some element of Varric accepting that, like, actually, yeah, like, some of what she said hit home, because in a way that has been what's happening. She doesn't hate him, but I think what she said did come from somewhere real, I think is what you're meant to kind of take from it. That's an element of it, even if she didn't commit to like a full betrayal. She still wanted their dynamic to actually change, so that was cool. And then you see Bolin also realize how big of a just mess like Varric made of that. So there's that. Wu gets a bit of a moment to shine here as well. Mako kind of gives a slightly boring, maybe overly technical review of the evacuation procedures, causing a bit of a panic in the city as they want to evacuate everyone. Wu gets on and manages to basically connect with them on a more personal level, establish the idea of, like, for us to eventually win in the end, we have to survive this, so go through with the evacuation and we'll come back and we'll win again, we'll be Republic City again. And I like that, because his odd style of speaking, his humor, just the simplicity of, like, I've only just recently learned to go to the toilet on my own. If they win, we can't do that anymore. We have to keep that a thing that we can do, and just it connect with people, all the phone calls stop. And Lin actually is the one this time to say to Wu, you might not make such a bad king after all. They're leading you in the direction of, like, he's morphing into the king that we need, which makes his eventual decision in the end all the more kind of impactful, because he's almost earned the role. Like, I think he'd be an actually okay Earth King, but he realizes that the world kind of doesn't really need that anymore. But he can play some sort of role, I suppose. But yeah, it's a fairly simple episode, because it is just a lot of setup. It's a lot of getting people into position for the oncoming battle. The loss of Republic City for the most part. The army isn't really going to play a role in all of this, because it's a surrender. And it's another setup of like what could have been a big army on army battle, but they're immediately cutting it down to make it a bit more personal, that in the end it's going to be our hero characters against the Colossus and Kuvira's forces, and that's what's going to create the drama of the situation, because it's going to be against the odds, because the main army of the hero characters can't actually fight back. I really don't think there's too much else to say about this one. I've covered Baatar, Kuvira, Korra's kind of big moments in the episode. The reveal of the Colossus itself, I suppose, at nighttime was cool. It's just, I think looking back on it now, the actual reveal of it, now that we know it's obviously a thing, it doesn't feel as big. At the time, it obviously felt bigger when we didn't really know where things were heading. But, it's fine. But I think that's really all there is to do here. As I said, it's a setup episode. It has a few nice moments, but I think the core big moment that they're going for in this episode doesn't quite hit home like it needs to, because it's lacking in development. Like a lot of the stuff that relates to, I suppose, getting Kuvira from book 3 to book 4, that's what's really missing, and it feels like there's a lot of disconnects now with Kuvira because we don't have that. The key thing in this episode, as I said, I don't know how I'm meant to feel about Baatar and Kuvira's relationship. I know how Baatar feels, but I don't know how Kuvira feels, and I don't think it's necessarily like it's a positive because she's still mysterious, we don't actually know how she feels about this thing. It feels more of just like, no, you purposely didn't give us the information and are trying to sort of make it vague, and it doesn't quite work. So that's my review for Kuvira's Gambit. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the episode, and yeah, we'll be finishing the rewatch in the next couple of days. The plan is that I'll do episode 12 on Tuesday and episode 13 on Wednesday, and on Wednesday I will talk about the series of videos I'll be doing as a sort of wrap up to the rewatch, which I'm already in planning for, and I think they should be pretty interesting. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.